Hello, and thank you for stopping by once again. As always, I hope you're having a good day. And today we will continue on about where we left off. And safe to say that we have uncovered enough evidence to support the claim that this Exodus was really a reign of terror, and that the Jehovah Yahweh evidently didn't want the job. He hated the people, and the people returned the compliment. They hated him too, but they were led along under the pall of fear, and we know that he killed off an awful lot of them for sometimes the most trivial reasons. Today I'd like to firm up the timeline because we have a very, very interesting sequence of events, and as the title suggests, a real clue as to what happened at the Red Sea, which didn't really happen at the Red Sea. I am experiencing some equipment problems, mainly with my printers, so I'll have to describe one of these images for you, and I'll do that when the time comes. So anyway, we have the year 1490 as the year in which the Exodus started. It was also the year of the death of Thutmose II, which we also discovered, or whom we also discovered, wasn't really a very popular guy. In fact, it seemed like his memory was to be expunged from all the records. Like people wanted to pretend like he just wasn't there anymore. And again, the parallel with Khrushchev's de-Stalinization program in the Soviet Union. And we have another one coming up, believe it or not. But anyway, 1490 BC is also significant for another reason. It was the birth year of Thutmose III. And this accounts for Hatshepsut, who wasn't his mother. Thutmose II had him with a serving girl, and her name was Ei or something like that. And so, but Hatshepsut, as Thutmose's widow, ruled Egypt as a regent until the young fellow was of age where he could assume the duties of Pharaoh and actually put on the double crown. We're not exactly told when this happened. A good guess would be at about the age of 16. We know he had a powerful following, and a couple of other things that you might not understand, and that is that he counted his reign as beginning in 1490. And, of course, there's all kinds of hype and adulation, all this mystical, magical wonder that the current Egyptologists assigned to Queen Hatshepsut, the great Queen Hatshepsut. It turns out that Thutmose didn't think very much of her, and for reasons we can only guess about, but here's another, let's pretend it never happened, because as soon as he assumes the pharaonic throne, he sends workers around to deface any image of Hatshepsut, any reference to Hatshepsut, as if, well, just not there. So she didn't mysteriously disappear. Thutmose III climbed on the throne, gave her a shove aside, and I'll leave it to you to guess whether or not she was just sent off to the Thursday afternoon garden club, or maybe to the guys that make mummies. We'll see, I don't know. And it also turns out that there's something else about the year 1490, and we'll get to that very shortly. But now let's say Thutmose assumed the pharaonic throne at the age of 16. Well, this would have put it at the year 1474 BC. Is that right? Yeah, okay. And he would have first, of course, probably had to deal with the revolting Nubians, and prepared for this invasion, this reconquest of the present-day Middle East, Palestine, Canaan, Lebanon, and Syria. And we also discovered that when he completed the conquest, his stone monument commemorating the victory wasn't too far away from another that celebrated the same feat, but on the part of Thutmose I, if not his actual grandfather, at least his political one. So, meanwhile, back in the wilderness, we find that the people are just milling around aimlessly, wandering from place to place, often complaining for the lack of food, the lack of water, and complaining that they had to leave Egypt. Well, that's all there. And Jehovah regularly leaves and goes off somewhere, and that's when the children break camp and just go on to the next stop, and only encamp and set up the portable palace, the tabernacle of the congregation, when he's in situ or in residence, let's say. Well, somewhere in Deuteronomy, I think it's around chapter 31, this is at the end of about 20 years, when Yahweh informs Moses that he will not live to see the promised land. And this is because the people, the children of Israel, aren't ready yet. In one of the verses he tells them, well, they're going to go whoring around, and they're going to go hobnob with the bad guys or the other guys, and they're going to worship the false gods and all this stuff. So we better stick around out here for another 20 years. And of course, you're not going to live that long, so now we'll put Joshua in charge. Now, that's a funny point, because in 1470, this is 10 years into, or 20 years into the Exodus, this is when we can be fairly certain that Thutmose III had begun his war of reconquest. And because of the Jehovah's ability to just take off and go wherever he pleases, that he probably did some reconnaissance and knew about that, and so another 20 years was added onto the program, though I don't know if it was going to be exactly another 20 years, but that's the way it turned out. And it was at this time that he ordered the people to cross Jordan. Now, people have assigned all kinds of aesthetic reasons, for spiritual reasons for crossing the Jordan. And you hear Negro spirituals about getting on the other side and all that. Well, the real reason was that he knew the damn Egyptians were coming, and he wanted those people to move away. He didn't want those people to know that the Egyptian army was coming this way, and maybe even by that time was fairly close, because, as we can well imagine from what we've already observed, these people would have defected en masse. Take us back to Egypt, where we have fish and cucumbers and melons and leeks and onions and garlic and all the other stuff to eat. So, upon the completion of the conquest, Tutmosis III is back in Egypt by 1450 BC, and that is when the Exodus is done. So you see, we have a pretty nice little timeline. Things are starting to fit together really, really well. But that other bit of information concerning the Red Sea, well, I believe that I already mentioned that sometimes the spirit takes over and I just go somewhere, no idea why, and even after a time, still don't know why. And one of these instances was when I picked that slim maroon-colored hard cover volume on Atlantis. And as I said, I wrote home and read the book because I thought that that's what I'm supposed to do. And it's amazing. It was actually a group of essays by experts in diverse fields like meteorology, geology, seismology, volcanology, whatever, history, philosophy. And the purpose of it was to determine if Atlantis ever existed, and where were the likeliest spots for this. And well, they decided that since Atlantis disappeared in some great cataclysmic disaster, sank into the sea, well, maybe they would just go through the list of known disasters that throughout history and see if one of them might lead to the discovery. And it was in this book that I first learned that Plato had visited the city of Sais in Egypt and heard the priests of Ra tell him about Atlantis. And so anyway, the thing that really caught my attention was the island of Terra. It's in the archipelago to the, well, it's the southernmost in the Aegean archipelago. That's a group of islands in the Aegean Sea. And it was pretty interesting because this island, it's currently named Santorini, but then it was called Terra. And something funny happened. Well, Terra, back in those days, you see, there was some indication of seismic activity before the great event, and the island had a big volcano, and you would think the event I'm referring to might have been a huge eruption of that volcano. Well, I'm sure that was part of it, but the fact is that the island exploded, and almost half of it sank into the ocean, kicked up a tsunami 500 feet, according to the experts. 500 feet, which is about half as high as the Empire State Building, and that damaged settlements on the eastern and southern shore of the Mediterranean. And it was capable, according to them, of achieving 300 miles an hour over open water. Well, now I have a little map to show you here, and it has to do with the Red Sea. Now, if you look at you look at this map, and you'll see the part that is shaded, if I can find it. Whoops, where is it? Nothing like a little preparation, huh? Oh, it's I'm holding it upside down. Well, there you go. Now you see this blue section here that's circled? Did you see that? Yeah, right there. Now from that, we can understand that the headwaters of the Red Sea didn't come anywhere near the Mediterranean. In fact, it's 72 miles to between the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, and it's all desert. And this is the dry land that Tutmosis I and III crossed over to go into the Middle East to conquer the territories, and that's where the Hittites, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and all the rest marched into Egypt in their turn. They didn't have to cross the sea. Now, the elevation in that part of the Middle East is about 9,000 feet. Pretty high. Now, but along the that track was a wadi. And it's a deep depression, almost like a funnel or groove that runs up to the Mediterranean. And that opening where that wadi once fronted on the Mediterranean was only 700 miles from Terra. And I'll leave it to you to suppose whether maybe the island had a little help exploding, that maybe something was entered into it, like a thermonuclear device. And that's interesting because some researchers now have found some a new discipline that will help them to spot locations where huge conflagrations had taken place. And the standard they use are those horrific places, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And using ground-penetrating radar from the air and observing the deep impressions from these two places, have also found about 5 similar sites that look exactly the same, and 2 of them are thought to be the sites of Sodom and Gomorrah, which were 2 actual cities, and in the region of their location, I mean, where they were, there still remains sand fused into glass, as it would be if it were subjected to higher temperatures. Well, now the people who contributed to this book were all unanimous in that this terror incident took place sometime between 1500 and 1450 BC. And there was one author there were several books about Thera, Santorini, the explosion. And one of these authors had concluded a year in which this happened. And you know what the year was? Can you guess? 1490 BC. Now I've lost track of who it is. I just saw it on an internet search about Thera, and the book was there, so I know it exists, and I'll see if I can find it later. But imagine that. Now, let's go back to Exodus, and I forget about the 3rd chapter. No, maybe it's farther back. I'm a little dyslexic, so I'm not sure I recall things correctly all the time. That's why I have to write everything down so I don't forget. So we know that whatever happened at the Red Sea, or, well, not at the Red Sea, took place at night. And by this time, the children of Israel and the Jehovah and the whole gang were up on the high ground on the east end of the wadi, the east side of the wadi. And I believe that they employed some distractions or some way of slowing the approaching Egyptians down so that they would arrive at the wadi too late in the day to conduct any military operations. They didn't have night vision or powerful spotlights back in those days, or at least we don't think so. So here are the Egyptians. Imagine the Egyptians camped out in that wadi, probably near the bitter lakes. I don't know why they were bitter, but the water could have been treated to maybe give it to the horses, and maybe to drink themselves, or maybe just to soak their feet. Who knows? But so there they are, getting tucked in for the night, and then they hear a sound. Sounds like a locomotive coming. Of course, they don't know that because the locomotives haven't been invented yet, but it's a real loud roar coming down on them. And it's a wall of water. Because it would have taken no more than about 3 hours for that tsunami to come ashore at the lip of that wadi, where it opened out onto the Mediterranean, and then was impelled. You know what an impeller is? Just in case you don't. Think garden hose. Turn the water on and you get a flow of water coming out, and you can take a drink if you want, or whatever. And it's just a normal flow. But you put a nozzle on there, adjustable one, where the water has to be forced through a small opening, and you have an impeller. So imagine this wall of water hitting the Egyptians all at once. Besides doing some radioactive tests on the island of Santorini, it might be fun to go out into the Red Sea, not too far out, but far enough to try your bottom, whatever this sonar, spiking some pings down there and see if you might not find some chariot wheels or bronze swords or something, that because when the children of Israel came out in the morning, why, they found the Egyptians dead on the shore. Read it, on the shore. Well, how did they get up there? Well, something was really afoot, and I think slowly we're unwrapping the truth so that we can see it more clearly. But I think I mentioned before that there was a reason why the Exodus was undertaken altogether. And it's a reason that I haven't heard anybody else mention. Well, let's go back to that magic year of 1920 BC. When the Israelites are introduced into Egypt to settle in the land of Goshen on the plain of Ra as a fifth column. And a fifth column is when a foreign population is introduced into the target country so they can serve as a screen to hide the nefarious acts of the plotters and schemers, the Zionists. And as we can see, as it turned out, the playbook is the same, the stuff they did in Germany, the stuff they did in Great Britain And I think it's a serious injustice that I would like to address the world's Jews and call to their attention, and that is because, well, you figure this way. Suppose one of the people that lives on your street commits a crime. Maybe he tries to hold up a convenience store, or maybe it's a bank robber or whatever. Police find out about it and they come down to get this guy. Well, they don't arrest the whole neighborhood, and that's the message. So it is in the interest of all decent, hardworking, intelligent, resourceful, and basically pretty honest Jews, the good Jews, to join in the eradication of these nasty, violent psychopaths. These are not human beings. These people have no souls at all. And if you want to find out what their world view is, bring up the Talmud and see what that says. Like, if you borrow money from a Gentile, or a Goy as they're called, you don't have to pay him back. He's just an animal. Or if you get sick and you have liver damage and you need a transplant, it's okay. Go kill a Goy and take his liver, because you're the only real human beings. Now, if that doesn't make you puke, I don't know what will, but gradually we're pulling the curtain away and letting you see what really happened, because these spiteful mass murderers and criminals, international criminals, staged the Exodus for one reason, and it was to spite the Egyptians. It wasn't to help the Jews or the Hebrews. It was a slap in the face to the Egyptians. Because this fifth column that originally entered Egypt as part of their conquest plan, or their plan for conquest, had now become a real asset into Egypt. They were happily making bricks to be used in tenements, row houses, public buildings, private dwellings, and they made good bricks. And after Amosa, the first pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, died in 1550 BC, he was succeeded by a very, very brilliant, very intelligent, very humane pharaoh, and this was Amenhotep I. And he was also a fine military leader as well, and he played a great role in the closing years of the resurgency that finally threw the Hyksos out of Egypt, sent them packing back to Canaan, I guess. And he looked at the record and he pretty well figured what was going on, and realized that the Hebrews that were in Egypt were really a very innocent, hardworking people. So he didn't appoint taskmasters or treat them harshly at all. And that's why even you heard the quotes, and if you had your Bible out, you could read the quotes. Why did you take us out of Egypt? Didn't we tell you to leave us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? We had fish and melons, and cucumbers. I think some books mention eels too. So I mentioned they were pretty happy because they didn't want to go back to Canaan, but that's where they ended up. A slap in the face to the Hebrews as well. So it's an interesting story, and it's narratives, historical narratives like this that make me wonder why people bother writing fiction. History is much more interesting and racy. Let's not forget. Now, we're heading in to the direction of closure, because you're gonna be surprised where this ends up. And it relies, or the clue rather, is a little phrase in the books of Isaiah that most people don't even realize it's there. But it's the key that unlocks a whole new set of circumstances. So I hope you'll come back and see what you think. In the meantime, I am going to go back and see if I can solve these technical problems. But don't worry about that. I always manage. And by all means, have the best day ever. And I don't really know very much about what's going on here, but if you like this video, hit the like button and tell your friends, but not if they're the fundamentalist brainwashed kind. We don't need those, and there's no point in upsetting them. Let's just circulate this information throughout the real people, the people with souls, the people who look forward to a time of peace and order and harmony, like I do. And so with that, take care, and don't worry, be happy, because we're going to win in the end. In fact, we're already winning. So take care of yourself, have the best day ever, and so long.